Archimatix, animating with Playmaker.
I'll use Playmaker to animate an Archimatix runtime model. I'm targeting this video for beginners of both Playmaker and Archimatix, so I'll keep it simple and step-by-step. Playmaker will generate random float variables and update the model's exposed runtime parameters. In actual use, these parameters would be tied to a game mechanic, or player stats, or some user interface. I don't care what the numbers are, I just want them to change. So I'll use random.
In Archimatix, I open the parameter settings I want to animate, and check Expose. I'll do this for each parameter that will be animated. The runtime parameters appear in the inspector, in the order they were created. I can rename each one with an alias. Create the runtime controller script, give it a name without spaces or punctuation, and save it in your project. The runtime controller game object is created as a child of the Archimatix model. When I need to get and set the parameters on the model, Playmaker will target this game object, specifically the controller script.
I'll create a new FSM, and this could be on any game object. It could be on a brand new object, or a central scene manager, but for this tutorial I'll build the FSM on the root of the Archimatix model. With the game object selected, right-click in the Playmaker editor. Playmaker opens with a blank start state, and I'll drag the runtime controller game object into the empty state panel. This opens a pop-up where Playmaker offers a list of generic things it can do, but I am only interested in this script component, which is the name of that runtime controller I made. Under my script I have 3 options: get property, set property, and under script control I have a third option, call method. This will be important later, but at first I just want Playmaker to get the Archimatix parameter and store it as a float variable, which I'll name my height. I add a random float action, set the target range, and create another Playmaker variable to hold the random value. I'll call this new variable toHeight. To finish the state, I right-click on the node in the graph and select Transition. Finish.
Command-click on the transition and drag to create another state node. In the new state, I add the isFloat action and set the from value to my height, and set the to value as toHeight. This works like any other tweener in Playmaker. Set the isInOut and the time. Create the finish event for when the isFloat action is done.
While isFloat is running, the state engine stays on this node, and it will rerun actions that have every frame checked. If you leave every frame unchecked, the actions will only fire once. So while isFloat is running, I'm going to set the parameter on the model every frame. This time I'll add the action a little differently, just to show another method. Select the runtime controller in the hierarchy and lock the inspector window. Switch back to the game object with Playmaker, and drag the component into the state panel. I select the set property action from the pop-up, choose my exposed parameter, and set the variable to my height. I want it to update every frame.
The last step is to add the call method. There are only 2 options. The third option is generic. The 2 options are build game objects and build all game objects. I'm not sure what the difference is, but I'll pick the one that sounds like it is doing less work. And I want to set the call method to rebuild every frame.
In Playmaker I'll finish by looping back to the start state and hitting play.
If I want to animate other parameters, I can daisy chain the states, so they animate one after another, or I can merge them all under one isFloat timer. When the call method rebuilds, it will generate all parameters at their current float settings. Different parameters could develop at different speeds, giving each an organic or mechanical feeling. Animating deformers is also possible.
If you are thinking that Archimatix models can become bloated and slow, and they will take too long to rebuild, and a complex model would never animate this cleanly, you may be right. But I've learned some tricks to this.
2D shapes, the sections and plans at the foundation of the model, are always slow. They force the entire model to rebuild from scratch, and because they change the foundation shape, every node that relates to them needs to update.
Animating something inside a grouper is slow. I'm pretty sure it triggers everything within that grouper to update. You can experiment and see if that is happening with your model, and maybe it can be avoided by rethinking the graph arrangement.
Extrude and lathe are relatively fast, especially if there are no new vertices being created. If the mesh does not need to rebuild from 2D shapes, it can be moved and sized in real time.
Floors and repeaters are very fast, even when the model is large. That's because Archimatix moves the heavy lifting to the GPU with Unity instances. Instances can be moved around quickly, which includes offsetting and rotating the floors.
3D transforms are fast, it's just Unity moving geometry, so look for ways to move vertices that are already in the scene.
Also, remember that both Archimatix and Playmaker run faster in builds than in the Unity editor.
And for huge, bloated Archimatix models that haven't got a chance of animating in real time, there's always offline rendering.